Hey everybody, David Brooks here. Welcome to another edition of Advisor Talk. In the studio with me now is a good friend of mine, Kurt Fillmore, who runs Wealth Track, along with his wife, Erica, out of Detroit, Michigan, just north of the city there. So
that's correct.
How we doing?
Doing well, David. Good
so
to be
this
here.
is the second time you've got to visit my office. I think
That's
the first time we had just moved into this location. We did not have this studio built, right?
Correct.
And we were talking about how open it didn't have any of the cubicles. It's amazing how much our company's grown. But since that visit, at that time, you were just under the acquisition phase of buying an old bank building and converting it into your new office, which you've been into for a little while now. So how did that transition go? How did your clients receive the new building? What was that like?
Oh, the new building's been great. I mean, when you go from to a nice modern facility, that obviously is
We've been there,
nice
and for clients that have been on our firm since say 2018, they know the dungeon we used to operate out of. You know, so it is nice when you upgrade the office.
Oh,
right?
For sure. Now we had a little bit more we had to do than you did with the floor plan. Here is amazing. You didn't have to deal with the knocking down the drive-through and
you bought it in literally an old, I think it was Bank of America building,
old
right?
Bank of America
and then
branch.
But literally added on a ton of square footage. And of course, you have something we don't have for our clients. You have an actual state-of-the-art golf simulator that anybody can come in and use.
Yes.
That's a nice competitive advantage, I'd say, right?
It is. And the funny thing is I don't really golf, but but my clients love it. My kids actually love it because you also get you get all the other games where you can do field goal kicking and all that stuff. So
that's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
It's pretty fun. So doing soccer and all those things.
Well, so obviously you can write that off. That's a business expense now. So that's a fun way to pick up one of these. Now, I didn't know about the field goal kicking.
Yeah.
And now you were my guest this past weekend. And for our Husker fans out there watching this, please forgive this man. He's wearing the appropriate color. He was my guest this past Saturday for the Huskers against Michigan. He's a Michigan alum and, of course, took him to the game. But we had a great time together. It was a fun day. And, of course, our Huskers put up a pretty good fight, but fell 3 points shy.
It was a good game. It was a good competitive game. Fun to be in Memorial Stadium for the first time.
What I think was neat is you told us that this was your first away experience following the Blue, right? So
it was actually because we've been to actual playoff games where it's been neutral site, but never to another stadium. So
Nebraska
cool.
Nice was real. You found out, right?
It was very real.
People treated you really well. In fact, we took care of him really well. He got to go meet the governor, so he got to have tailgating with Governor Jim Pillen before the game. So that was kind of a unique experience. And of course, that's actually the first time I've met the governor before, but the first time we've ever done the tailgating with him. So that was kind of a fun thing.
No, for sure. And it was doing a little razzing with the governor was a fun time. So we enjoyed that. Yeah.
Well, speaking of politicians, right? So we've had politicians in D.C. kind of make some pretty big legislative moves that affect both of our clients and any prospective future clients or any folks that are about to walk into retirement. It's known as the One Big Beautiful Bill, right? But it made some unique changes to the tax landscape, and it kind of imposes what we call legislative risk. We just had, I think pretty well, you know her as well, Becky Swangsburg in for a client event about a week and a half ago. We had over 300 clients attend her talk on the future legislative changes. Due to this change, it means other changes are going to have to come in the future. You just did a unique event with the charity?
Detroit Opera.
Yeah, the Detroit Opera. And so talk about that experience and kind of what you were able to do there.
So I've always, my dad was very much into the arts and supporting the arts. So actually, when I was 19, I went to the opera for the first time with my dad and kind of learned about that, which was cool. But my dad was a school teacher and really loved to support the arts. But again, modest income, right? Yeah. My parents were divorced, so that added another, financial element to it. But my dad was extremely proud that he actually, they rebuilt the Opera House. And in 1996, they reopened it.
Oh, nice.
And my dad brought this brick. He spent $100 for this brick. And he said, no matter how much money you have, always give to the causes you care about. And my dad took me to that first opera, and unfortunately, 6 months later, he passed away.
Oh.
So I have, a connection to the opera because my brother and I used my dad's season tickets to go to the shows after he passed and experience that.
Well, I love that that's got meaning to you, and that was what your dad supported. And now you as a company are giving back. You've had some wonderful success financially. You help a lot of affluent clients and mass affluent clients in the Detroit marketplace retire with confidence. but you're leading the way. You're showing them how to care about whatever causes they care about, right? And you just happen to now. What I want you to do is pivot here because I've been blessed to have you as a friend for I guess about 7 years now, something like that. Yeah, and you came to one of the original tax masterminds I hosted here with advisors that now we do these all from all over the country. I don't remember. I think that was 5 years ago. I'm trying to remember when it was that you came, but you've been implementing tax strategies for your clients consistently, and the BBB, as we were just talking about, has some, there's some changes that are coming that can maybe incentivize people that want to give to the charities or cause they like.
Right.
This year, it's more important to really consider that, right?
Yeah, 2025 is a big year because the laws are changing for 2026. So this is actually part of the reason why the Detroit Opera brought me down to speak to their major donors. They have an association called the Avanti Society that are their large donors. And basically through your help and advancing my tax strategies from the business masterminds we've done here, that allowed me to be, considered an expert in this topic of charitable giving. And that's why I went down and discussed a number of strategies, but in particular, one of the biggest ones for this year is the donor advised fund.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while on the radio show.
Right. So the donor advised fund for 2025 is different than what it will be in 2026. There's urgency to take advantage of the current laws before the big beautiful bill changes it for 2026. Basically, what we have is a 0.5% of AGI hurdle that you have to overcome before you get that full charitable deduction starting next year. So a lot of people are familiar with the medical expenses, have that 7.5% hurdle before you can write off and itemize those deductions. It's the same thing they're starting with charity. So put some urgency on getting your DAF in place now.
And so just explain to you, for those that are watching here, what is a DAF? It's a donor advised fund. This is a simple strategy. I personally utilize mine every single year. But oftentimes for pre-retirees or retirees, we may use this every third or fifth year. In other words, it's a way you can lump your giving that you would do anyway. So if you were supporting, whether it's the opera, your church that you're tithing to, or the local food bank, whatever the cause, as long as it's a legal charity, then you can pre-give to a donor advised fund. Now, you can get really creative with how you give to it, but we'll just use cash for the first example here. You could, if you were going to donate $10,000 to this charity every year, you're not likely deducting that. You're not filing what's called a Schedule A itemized return. But if you were to donate maybe 5 times that this year, the next 5 years donations, $50,000, well, you can write that $50,000 off your tax bill today. Right. On top of that, the SALT deduction, if you're paying local or state income tax or property taxes, another $10,000. Now you have a Schedule A for $60,000 instead of the standard deduction, a little over $30,000. If you're in the, say, 24% tax bracket, well, 24% of about $30,000, you just put almost a full year's donation back in your pocket. So and with growth of that donor advised fund, which, by the way, you can invest, now you've got 6 years of giving out of 5 years of donations. So you're giving to the causes, but you're just taking advantage of the incentives in the tax code. Now, that's a real basic example. Of course, we'd rather you donate a highly appreciated asset to that donor advised fund. Maybe you own some stock or bonds or what have you. It could even be real estate, and if it, in certain situations, but you can donate the asset to the fund, eliminate the capital gain on that sale of that asset because it's now in a charitable account, and then use it to send out donations in the several years coming out. But to your point is higher net worth people that donate to symphonies and operas, they typically are dealing with a more affluent client in general. Not always, but just in general. That's who tends to go to those the higher cultural arts, as they're called, right? So those folks may be in that higher income tax bracket where their hurdle, they may give away $100,000 a year, but to get to that AGI hurdle that's going to come in next year, it may not be enough, where if they lump that together this year, they could get full advantage of it for the next couple of years. So it's really important they pay attention to these strategies.
Right. And I've heard you call it bunching before, right?
Yeah.
So I like the DAF. I like to call that super bunching, where you're just doing it all at once, in 1 year. And to your point, you can certainly do more in future years, but it gives you that huge tax boost that you wouldn't otherwise get.
In Nebraska, property taxes are quite high relative to some states. So that's one of the problems. So a lot of our folks will hit the $10,000 limit, which, by the way, now is up to $40,000 if your income is not too high, for the what we call the SALT deduction. So the way we pair that with a donor advised fund is if we're not going to go to the income thresholds of the SALT deduction. We will sometimes in December have them pre-write next year's property tax bill to give even bigger of a write-off again in the same year, bunching. So let's bunch your charitable giving and your property taxes in the same year. And believe me, the county will not argue with you if you're going to pay your property taxes. No one's going to say, no, we don't want that money. So it's understanding how to utilize these strategies and then putting them together, stacking them together, and maybe doing a Roth conversion with the tax savings, stacking tax strategies, you get a compounding effect, and you put your clients in a better position so they really can support the causes they care, right?
Right. These more specialized strategies, they really get amplified when you use them in conjunction with each other, and that's where you really start getting the benefit.
Yeah, and I will tell you out there, if you're thinking about this, there are even heavier advanced strategies. So there are what's called charitable remainder trust or charitable leads trust. And they come in a couple of different variations and forms. They're CRUTs and CRATs, so you don't need to worry about all that. But basically, if you were going to give a $2 million gift, you may want to set it up in a charitable remainder trust. You can actually benefit with income back to your family off of that and still get the full write-off, et cetera. So, and Kurt's whole team is well-versed in this as well. So whether you're in Omaha or Detroit, if charitable giving is important to you and you were going to give these gifts anyway, 2025 is a year you definitely want to talk to somebody about, hey, maybe I should put in place an advanced strategy so I can do this and get the full tax credits I believe I'm entitled to. And again, these are not tax loopholes. We talk about this all the time. It's incentives in the tax code because the charities do the work the government doesn't have to. When you donate to a local food bank or a homeless shelter, they're providing services to our community that the government doesn't have to step in and do. This is why they put an incentive in the tax code in the first place, because they are going to usually be better stewards of those dollars than the federal government trying to do the same thing. At least that's what I think.
We certainly hope so.
Yeah. All right. So let's pivot a little bit now. You guys moving into that new office have grown your practice, and you have quite a practice there. One of the things that we took advantage of picking your brain while you're here and your beautiful wife, Erica, is office efficiency. You guys have done a great job. You guys have about a quarter of the staff that we have here at our office, but I mean, you've been able to run at a pretty good pace there. Tell me a little about how you guys have kind of decided to build that business. And what I like is you and I were at dinner last night, and you set your schedule, and this is key for any entrepreneur out there, around your life. So you take your kids to school basically every single morning, and they have a late start in your school district. Mm-hmm. And so your first appointment's typically not till 10 o'clock in the morning.
Right. Well, family is very important to me. I have smaller children. My oldest, he's 13. He actually gets himself off to school in the morning. But our two younger ones are at the elementary school, which is basically a block from our house. So I take them. It's very important to me. I've done this since every one of them started school. Was I will walk them to school every morning.
That's really cool.
Important to me. A lot of the parents know who I am because they see me actually run up to the school with one of the kids on my shoulders, because that's what I've done since my oldest, who's 13 now, since he was in preschool. He wanted me to put him on his shoulder, or put him on my shoulders and take him to school, and I've done that for every single kid.
So is this the workout regimen then?
This is actually my
carry a kid.
Yes, this is actually a real workout, especially now that Mason, being 7 years old now, he's a pretty hefty little guy. So
well, they're only going to get bigger, so
right.
keep
so
your workout going.
I told him this is your last year. All the other ones only went through first grade. But anyway, yeah, that's very important to me, is to make sure to spend schedule your schedule according to what's important to you, and make sure you have that family time scheduled in.
Well, let's pivot that, talking about retirees, right? So many of them have not thought about what it means to be retired. And I literally just, clients that I personally brought onto the firm about 6 years ago, one of the advisors was doing their annual review with them just this past week, and I happened to see them, so I popped into the conference room and was chatting with them, and the husband had been retired for about a year and a half and has kind of got set in his hobbies and what he enjoys doing at the time. She had just retired, and she was literally going crazy. Like, I don't know what to do with myself, David. And I'm like, well, I know you haven't spent 40 hours with him. We were just joking. I have good friends with. Sure. But it's a transition, and I think that's really important when we talk about retirement planning. It's not just the asset investments. It's not just building an income plan and tax management, all the blocking and tackling we do as holistic financial planners. It's what is the purpose of this money? It's just a tool, but what is the lifestyle you want to lead? And some people, they want to go world travel. Some people want to just kind of tinker on the old Chevelle or what have you, or they want to dote on their grandkids, take them to school every day. It's really important, though. Talk about how how you have to become part-time psychologists in this business to coach people through that transition, because it's different for everybody.
You're 100% right. I mean, there's the financial end of it, but then the emotional end of it can be just as important, if not more important. You know, watching Netflix documentaries after you retire will last maybe a few weeks before you'll get a little bored of that, right? And you see people end up going back to work, not because they need the money, but simply because they don't know how to handle their time and what to do with themselves. You need to find something that is going to mean purpose to you, so you can feel like you're being purposeful in your life. You know, there's a correlation between people passing away pretty soon after they retire, simply because of that. They don't have that.
There's no purpose, no drive.
Right.
Why am I getting up in the morning? Absolutely.
Exactly. So a lot of people don't consider what that needs to look like. So you need to have a plan for that too. There's an emotional end of this just as strong as there is financial.
That's a really important point. It seriously is we kind of encourage people to think about how will you spend your time, and to reference David Bach, a friend of ours, and I think you know David as well, but he's had a couple of New York Times bestsellers, and he was an advisor for years under Morgan Stanley's, and his dad was an advisor before that. I think it was Dean Witter, way back in the day, but basically he coined the phrase the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years, and it's very real. I always tell people the day you retire, you have the best physical ability you're ever going to have, mental ability, and financial ability to do things that matter to you. So if there are bucket list items, let's draw a plan up to do them. I mean, I had clients that did not save the greatest amount of money, and that's just the thing. Everybody's number's different, so it's not just coming with $3 million. Some people were not able to save but a few $100,000, but if you live within your means, you can have a wonderful retirement. But they just want to do some minor traveling inside the continental United States and had never taken the road trip. So I literally logged in, created them an Airbnb account in the conference room, booked their first trip, and oh my gosh, they called me on the trip like, we're having a ball, and we booked a bunch of things. They went and they have a relative out on the Puget Sound, and they just basically went down the Pacific Coast Highway, and we booked them 4 Airbnbs all the way down to LA, and then they flew back home, and they've still talk about this to this day. So it's very real that you've got to think through what matters to you. What are the go-go year projects you want to do?
Well, and the thing is I think a lot of people are in the dark about how well they've done with saving and where they really
is very real. Right. We can't spend that kind of yes, you can.
Exactly.
And we can build in a budget. Here's an extra $20,000 a year for travel. We will not let you run out of money because people that retire with $1 million today at 65 often are if it's a married couple. The surviving spouse passed away, and there's about 4.8 million. It's just under 5 million on average left if they retired at the $1 million. And that study is actually a little old now. The markets have done even better now, so it's likely to be even more.
Right.
You should really enjoy the fruits of that's what's working with a good planner. It's not just picking investments. How much can I spend? Well, we can show you, right? And we can map it out, and you can guarantee income if that's what you want to do. I mean, there's ways to do this. But what makes you happy? What puts a smile on your face?
Right. But that's what I love about what we do every day is because putting together income plans, showing people, look, you have the money. You've done a good job of saving. Take advantage of it. I think a lot of people, if you've been a saver your whole life, sometimes it can be hard to kind of.
It's difficult. That's my wife. My wife does not like to spend money. And I'm like, we're okay.
Right. So to your point of being a psychologist and the kind of in the meeting, I actually have an article in one of my conference rooms that is on the wall that says it's okay to let your financial advisor be your therapist.
Oh, nice.
Because
I might get you to send me a copy of that.
Yeah. But helping people to understand you have the money here. Spend it while you can, while you're in those go-go years where you can really take advantage of it. Because at some point you're going to end up not being able to travel as much. That's always been a passion in my family is traveling. Eric and I, we love to travel, been lots of different places. But really got that from my mom, my mom has been to, I think it's like 56 countries.
Wow.
Something like that. So she's really traveled all around the world, but she turned 81 this year. And she is going from the go-go years to the slow-go years. And it happened pretty quickly. She actually just this year went on her last international trip. She says she's not going to go on any more international trips. She'll still try to travel around the U.S., but you never know when that might happen. My mom had to have a couple knee surgeries, so you need to keep that in mind. Do it while you can.
I think you bring up a really quick point is the transition does come sometimes really aggressively fast. The transition, the rate of change of what your physical mobility is. And Melissa and I are blessed as of today, have all 4 parents alive. Ours are just a couple years older than yours, 85, 84, 83, and 82 respectively. But 3 of the 4 now need care in home. And this has all happened in the last 12 months. So we're dealing with long-term care issues for 3 or 4 parents all in the same fiscal year. My dad did, and my parents got divorced too when I was young, at 4 years of age. My parents got divorced. My mom never did very well financially. She was married to a different gentleman who took care of her, but there was no assets for her. So she has very little means to this day, but she was blessed to get to travel the world as well. But she's the one that's physically doing great. My dad needs care every day. Both my wife's parents now need care every day. And so this can put great financial strain on people that haven't done any foreplanning because we don't know when this is going to happen, right? It's literally almost like a flip of a switch. And again, we were blessed to get them all into their 80s, you and I both now, right? And all of a sudden that shift, the deceleration, we downshifted pretty quick. But we're upshifting the spending, but there's planning we can do for that as well, right? Talking about how you can help people plan. So listen, you don't have to be a burden to anybody. There's care you can get. There's ways you can get that covered. And it's not always just buying the old traditional long-term care insurance either.
Well, one thing I hear very commonly from clients is, it would be great if we left some money behind to our kids, but that's not really our main focus. Our main focus is just making sure we're going to be comfortable. But they always say the last thing I ever want to have happen is become a burden on my children. Right. And you need to do the planning in advance. Obviously, you can't wait for the last minute to try to take care of something like that. But we also have to consider the healthy spouse too, because if there's a spouse that's healthier, well, what could happen if one gets sick? Very often, someone will say, "Oh, I'll be able to take care of my wife if she gets sick," but that really isn't oftentimes possible. It becomes too difficult.
It becomes really complicated. And I've dealt with this in the family. Is like if someone were to have a severe, thing happen, like a stroke. Often stroke victims lose a lot of capabilities, right? Slurred speech, motor skills, especially one side of the body go down. The caregiver gets exhausted giving the care, and that's an unfair and unnecessary burden to put on them. Now, with all the love and care, they want to do it. But again, if you plan, there's ways that you can have this covered, and you can have, there's unique and newer, innovative insurance products, hybrid policies that can still, they're unique forms of life insurance, basically, but they will pay your children a death benefit. So if you just reposition money, that if you never use it, nobody loses any money. That's the great thing. But if you need it, it can provide for care right in the home. You don't have to go into a nursing home, but it can undo that burden for the caregiver so they can still enjoy their golden years, even though their partner's the one that's physically started to break down. They should still be able to enjoy their life, right? And it's so important that like healthcare. We're covering a lot of topics here, but like Medicare is a whole different topic where, most married couples, we've been on one of the spouse's health plans their whole working career. So it was the same plan, covered everything. Well, when you get to Medicare, it's very individualized. And just because you're on carrier A doesn't mean the spouse needs to be on carrier A. It could be very different based on the care or needs they have. So planning all this out well in advance gives you the confidence to know you're going to be covered. You'll have the resources to cover it, and then you can go about and do the things that matter to you, right?
Right. I think there's a few things there, David, you mentioned. For one thing, there's a misconception. A lot of people think, oh, well, there's no way I'll be able to afford long-term care insurance can be one of the things. Another one is this is going to be a black hole for my money. What if I never need long-term care? I've put all this money into it. And in
traditional long-term care insurance, that could be a factual statement, right? But the industry, and thank you to John Hancock, Genworth Financial. This is going back 27 years ago. I started my career. This is the product we would place for clients to cover these. Well, they actually didn't know what they're going to spend, right?
Right.
And thank goodness they shared that data with the entire community. So now the insurance companies have innovated incredibly well, I think, to now provide exactly. Well, if you don't need something, we can still pass an asset on to your kids and potentially do it tax-free.
Right. Yeah. So a lot of people don't even know these things exist in these different products, and they're much better and serve way more purposes than they did before. So looking into it, you can really customize this to whatever the situation is. And like you said, there's a lot of different solutions, but there's generally one that can be affordable and one that can fit into an overall plan for most families. That's really going to benefit them whether they need long-term care or not. But having that protection, that's the one thing that can really blow up a well-laid plan, right, is a healthcare issue.
No,
So-
I mean, we were shopping a home literally for one of our parents right now, and the home that everybody liked was $14,000 a month. You could start spending down some money pretty quick at that clip, you know. And if you have two spouses that would need care, it's getting quite expensive, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Man, we've covered a lot of ground here. What I want to do here before we wrap up is, how did you get into this business? What did you go to school for, and then how did you end up in this business?
That's a great question. Well, I have a finance degree, so that would be one thing that brought me to the industry. But I actually started off in supply chain management, and in supply chain, that was a lot of traveling the country and going to different companies, helping them improve their processes. But I had as I mentioned, my parents were divorced, and I had the unfortunate circumstance of my dad passing away when I was 19. I was actually in the business school at the time, but quite frankly, I didn't really know what to do with investments and money at that stage. And I got a little inheritance from my dad, my brother and I each. And I just went to my dad's advisor at a big firm and said, just do what you think is right. And he said, I'll put this mutual fund plan for it together and all this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know the difference, right? But what happened was, a few months later, I got a $40,000 tax bill in the mail, essentially.
Ouch.
Unexpectedly, didn't know it was going to happen.
So you're basically 20 years old, and you're getting a large tax bill when it comes?
Right. And he said, don't worry about it. We'll just pull the money out from the investments, and this is the late 90s. We'll just grow that $40,000 back for you.
Yeah. Easy, right?
Right. No problem. So that really made me start to think there's a better way to help families to do this. These big firms are very cookie cutter oftentimes, and really don't have true experts at their craft, unfortunately, which is why, I believe in what we do and being independent firms and really trying to give people their best overall experience.
Well, we're blessed. We have advisors come in and visit us. I go and visit other advisor offices. You and I see each other at probably at least 2 conferences a year, the same conference circuit, if you will, because iron sharpens iron, right? And
right.
I always tell clients, look, you don't have to come work with our firm at Retire Smart. You don't have to work with Wealth Track in Detroit, but I would highly recommend you work with an independent fiduciary-based advisor that's not beholden to the big box retailer, because exactly what they package together is these cookie cutter plans that are, well, on paper, they kind of statistically look good, but are they really tailored to the individual, to the specific needs? Are they covering, think all the things we just covered in the last 30 minutes: taxation, asset management, risk management, Medicare spending, long-term care, and psychology. We've covered a lot in a very short period of time here. So I think that's, there's always like a rooted story there. And I do remember, because I believe you said you'd just beaten Ohio State and were euphoric because that's your alma mater's big game. Unfortunately, the day you got the news with your dad. So, yeah. I can't imagine that. I'm blessed to have both my parents. I'm 57 today, and they're in their 80s, to lose them so early. But that stuck with you, the lesson. And it was me, and you kind of know my story. I sold a restaurant. I dropped out of college first time and started a restaurant, turned into something successful, sold it, and got whacked with a very large tax bill over 4 times the one you just talked about. And I was only like 23 years old. And I'm like, what? And so you don't know what you don't know. I say it all the time. So sit down with a competent financial planning professional wherever you're going to get your advice, and make sure they have the expertise and the experience in the areas that matter to you. That's what I always recommend to people. So
that's perfect.
So what's the, do you think any of your boys, any of your kids would want to come into this business?
I think my boys would. My daughter is very creative, so she might work in another area. But they're still young, so they're still finding themselves. I
have 2 boys. They're in their 20s. Neither one of them really wants to work in this business. I always hope that maybe they'll change their mind and want to come into it, because we've had this beautiful company, but now it's just like, all right, if it's not your dream, it's not your dream. Follow your passion, follow your heart. So
right.
Well, dude, thanks for jumping in the studio with us. This was fun. We covered a lot of ground, kind of crazy. So everybody, Kurt Fillmore with Wealth Track out of Detroit, Michigan. Thanks for watching Advisor Talk. We'll see you. And don't be afraid to subscribe to our channel below or like the bell. And I'm sure he's going to post this on his social media or YouTube channel as well. And make sure you give him a like as well. Thanks for watching.